So I thought that this movie set up in the beginning a very classic distinction between what Barbie wants and what Barbie needs. And this is a very classic way to set up a story, particularly with a hero's journey type of story. They made it very clear what Barbie wants. The opening scene is fantastic, which is basically the day in the life of Barbie, where everything is perfect and everything is going perfect for Barbie. And what is it like to live this very superficial, fun, glamorous, classic Barbie life. That's a fantastic sequence. And it sets up what does Barbie want. And she makes this very clear. I know she says it twice. She might even say it 3 times, that what she wants is for nothing to change. She wants nothing to change in her world. And because she lives this glamorous life day to day, right, that is shown in the first 20 minutes. So Barbie wants nothing to change. But that sets up the distinction between what Barbie wants and what Barbie needs. Barbie needs to learn to become self-sacrificing because she does need change in her world. She needs change in her world, and she needs to learn to become self-sacrificing and to start living for others, because she only lives this very vapid life for herself. They're all very self-involved, and yes, some of them are, the president and the Supreme Court justices, and there's the astronaut, and the doctor, and all the different Barbies that have been made. They're all running around, stuff like that. And I think it's important because on that level they have meaning. They can be an astronaut, they can be the Supreme Court justice and all of this. And yet, even in that, they're living a very vapid kind of life. So Barbie's very self-centered, and she is very superficial at the beginning of this. And she wants explicitly everything to stay exactly the way it is. But early on in the film, we have this incident where she starts, after the main scene, she starts to think about death, and she starts to have strange emotions. And the comical scene where her feet, like my heels are not supposed to be on the floor. Her heels go to the floor. And cellulite is the big thing. Oh my God, she's got cellulite. And we find out that there's this issue that somebody is dealing with some type of issue or trauma who seems to be playing with her, and it connects Barbie with the kid who's playing with her. And Barbie is saying, the weird Barbie. She goes to talk to the weird Barbie. We're going to talk more about her later. And basically the idea is that Barbie's going to have to go to the real world in order to help the person who is playing with her that needs help. And I thought this was a great setup right here. Barbie is going to have to think about somebody else, and she's going to have to go on this adventure to the real world to save them. And first, what does she do? She tries to hide from reality. Okay, they do the Matrix thing, except for it's like a pink, like high-heeled pump or whatever it is, and then the Birkenstock, right? And the weird Barbie's handing it. And which one of these do you want to go and live in the truth, or do you want to stay basically in Barbie world? And Barbie's instinct is to hide from reality. She chooses the pink pump. I'm going to take the pink pump, but they kind of make her. So in that way, she does kind of refuse the call to adventure. Hey, you need to go and save this person. You're feeling this way because somebody else is experiencing pain, is in trauma. You need to go and save them. Barbie refuses the call to adventure. She chooses the pink pump, but she gets lambasted for that, and she is called to go on her adventure. She's got to accept the Birkenstock and to go into the real world. But even then, she makes going on that adventure completely about herself, and only about herself, because she wants to be able to fix herself, because that way she can get her heels off the floor. And there's even the big banner as she's leaving in her pink Corvette, right, that's like, go save this girl, or whatever it is, go to the real world and whatever, and stop and keep from getting cellulite, right? So even when she's going on her adventure, she didn't really accept it to go and help somebody else. She went on this adventure to save herself, for a superficial, self-centered reason about her appearance, her looks, and it's all about her. Okay, so Barbie accepts the call to adventure, but in a very superficial way. So what is it that Barbie is supposed to learn on her journey? And she's going to go to the real world. Well, here's what they had basically set up. and again, I thought they had set up pretty well, that she was supposed to find out that one of the things that a Barbie doll does, a very serious thing that a Barbie doll can do, is that it's supposed to, that as a doll, she might have to take on the pains of the child who is playing with her. And this can be come in the form of being played with roughly. They introduced that with the weird Barbie, that why is the weird Barbie the way that she is? She's got weird cut up hair and strange clothes, and she's broken and she's been drawn on and stuff like that. And it brings up that she's been played with roughly. But as this doll is taking on, as the child is dealing with some type of trauma, or if the child is dealing with some type of trauma, it may manifest in the toy, in the doll, right? And so that's when you get played with roughly. You're having thoughts of death, like Barbie is. You're feeling the pain and in the child's trauma. But as you're doing so, and as you're taking that on as the Barbie doll, you're improving the life of the child. I thought this was where that was going. Let me skip this point right here, because they had set this up. And particularly when Cameron was talking about things particularly possibly being, or he was talking about like a tearjerker or something at the ending, which I just did not feel. But what happens when Barbie is confronted with that reality about the deep side of being a toy, of being a doll, and what you might have to sacrifice for the child who you love and who is playing with you? Well, of course, she would try to hide from that reality, but she's going to have to, during her character arc, and I think a character arc was definitely something that Barbie was missing in this story, she's going to have to learn to be self-sacrificing. And there's no moment in that story where that happens. So, but what was being set up was that she was going to have to sacrifice her perfection, like physical perfection, because that's what she values so much, to improve the life of the child that she's searching for in the real world who's having a problem. So you're going to see, they call her stereotypically Barbie, was going to sacrifice everything that makes her superficially Barbie and that she values so much in order to help this child out. And that could have been very powerful. And in fact, that's where I thought we were going. And if somebody was talking about like a tearjerker kind of moment in order to help that child, I thought that's where we were going. Now, that would be a very heavy kind of Barbie story. That would have been a very heavy, very heavy Barbie story. There are also elements of the story that I thought were left in because, like, possibly from some other iteration where it was a lighter story, but they kind of set up that going on. And they even set up the perfect mentor for that situation, because they set up Weird Barbie. Weird Barbie is supposed to be, I believe, really important in the story, and then ends up not being. Why is Weird Barbie so important? Because, okay, Weird Barbie was the herald, calling Barbie to adventure, but then also Weird Barbie needed to be the mentor for Barbie later in the story when Barbie can't quite get it together. This is probably about 60% of the way through the movie or something like that, and she needs to have what Lou, if you watch Lou on Table Talk when Lou is here, when Lou talks about every story, the hero's got a moment where somebody says, you know what your problem is, and tells them directly what they've got to fix. And that was supposed to be Weird Barbie. Superficial Barbie is having this trouble dealing with self-sacrifice. And Weird Barbie is supposed to guide her through that moment, because you're supposed to, at that point, you would have revealed what Weird Barbie really was, because she, through that rough play, you've introduced the idea of rough play and stuff like that, but then you really understand what caused that when Weird Barbie explains and has her mentorship moment with Barbie about 60 or 65% of the way through the film. The Weird Barbie, through that rough play, took on the pains of the child who plays with her to help that child through some type of major trauma. Okay, and it nearly destroyed her. And but Weird Barbie points out, even though she has been, how proud she is of her child, even though the child is now grown and is now well adjusted and is in some type of great career or whatever it is that child is doing. And even though Weird Barbie has now been discarded and forgotten about, she still looks on with pride on this child that she was able to help. And that would have had a serious emotional impact, because that would mean that, ironically, even though Weird Barbie is the outcast among the other Barbies in Barbie world, she was the only one that actually fulfilled her mission as a Barbie doll and as a toy, self-sacrificing herself for the well-being of her child. And that would have hit hard, and that would have shaken Barbie up, and then would have gotten Barbie in action and in gear to move on to the third act of the movie, to save that child by sacrificing herself. Okay, that's what they set up in this movie. It was going to be a hard-hitting movie. I mean, it started light. It started great. It started light and happy, but they set this up to really have this impact in the movie. And they decided not to pay it off. They decided not to pay it off in a big way. About halfway through this movie, they basically dropped the entire storyline about Barbie needing to go and help that child. And they basically drop it, and about halfway through, they all come back to Barbie World, and it's about saving Barbie World from Ken. Okay, so they set up this really great storyline about the relationship between Barbies and toys, Barbies and children and their toys, but then they balk halfway through the film and make it into something else. Okay, so I was going to say that once Barbie accepts that what she has to do is make this sacrifice for this child, you can plant something earlier in the story that's going to return some elements to stereotypical Barbie and allow her to return to Barbie world. There's plenty of magic and craziness in this movie anyway. You just kind of run with it. So that wouldn't have been out of place. And you come up with some reason about why that didn't happen for Weird Barbie, but you can have it happen to stereotypical Barbie. She can't get rid of all of her scars, metaphorical or psychological or physical. Like, you still need to have her have this, like she might still have the cellulite at the end, or she can still be flat-footed or something like that. But she comes to terms with that, and she returns more real. Okay. And here's where you put this in. So I found a point for that magic, because early on, we have the same, superficial Barbie. Once she enters the real world, she's sitting at a bus stop with an old woman. And this is very soon after superficial Barbie gets to the real world, and she has a touching moment with this old woman where she says, "You're beautiful," and the old woman says, "I know." And then either Barbie cries right before that or right after that, I can't remember, and then they move on. And somebody was telling me, see, where did I learn this? Because I said I haven't watched the commentary or anything like that on that. But somebody was saying, it may have been in Cameron's discussion with RM, that the studio wanted to cut that scene. So that scene with Barbie having this touching moment and telling this old woman that she's beautiful, the studio wanted to be cut because it had no purpose, and that the director apparently fought to keep it in. And said, like, if we don't have that scene, why are we even making Barbie? But I think the studio was right to cut that scene. That scene should have been cut because in its placement, it was not right. That end, once Barbie realizes that, here's what you should have done. You should have set up Barbie's encounter with that old woman early on in the film. Okay, after she comes to the real world, which, by the way, going from Barbie world to real world is a very clear hero's journey demarcation of going into the other world. They start going back and forth between Barbie world and the real world all the time, and that cuts down on the impact of making the hero's transition from their everyday world to the other world and then back. So if the story is going to be about going from Barbie world, entering the other world, dealing with the real world, then she'll come back to Barbie world at the end. But halfway through the story, they just start going back and forth. Once she gets early on, when she gets to the real world, Barbie needs to encounter that old woman and ignore her, or otherwise rebuff her, or be disgusted by her, or maybe this is the first time she's ever encountered aging. Maybe she doesn't understand what's going on with this woman. Why is she wrinkled? Why is she old? That's what should have happened. So her first and only encounter with this old woman is to look at her and smile and have a tear run down her cheek early on in the film and say, "You're beautiful." But no, superficial Barbie should have rebuffed that early on in the film. Then after she makes her sacrifice, then she makes an atonement. It's an atonement with the mother. Okay, an atonement with the mother. That's when she should have recognized the beauty of the old woman. And in recognizing the beauty of the old woman, that's when, rather than dealing with all of the harsh consequences of her sacrifice, she's allowed to be not fully restored, but repaired enough to return to Barbie world. That's how you use that. That's when that relationship with the old woman would have come in. Because as it stands right now, you're right. It's completely out of place. The studio was right. It was completely out of place in that start of that, basically the start of the movie. So that's how she gets back. Okay. So then Barbie returns to Barbie world. Okay. After that experience, she returns to Barbie world and is herself the agent of change for Barbie world. Okay. Because what did she want at the beginning of the story? She wanted nothing to ever change about Barbie world. And if the hero, in this case, the heroine, but the hero gets what they want, you know you're going to be telling a tragedy. So you can see how it would be a tragic story if Barbie world is the exact same superficial and vapid place that it was at the start of the movie. Barbie didn't want it to change. She becomes the agent of change by coming back to Barbie world. This is the classic trope of returning with the elixir to share what has been learned in the other world with all of the other people in what was her regular world, Barbie world. She returns and she brings the message of self-sacrifice and what it is that Barbies are really supposed to do, and changes Barbie world. Now they're no longer going to live in a vapid, materialistic, superficial existence. The Barbies now have a real purpose in helping others, and not just their superficial purposes, which were all about, like, being the astronaut and, being all of the career Barbies and things like that, and having the great car and stuff like that. They're forever changed because they understand their role in helping others. That was supposed to be the movie.